10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast, episode 129. Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson Podcast. So good to have you back. Hope you had a great week and hope you're ready to learn something new. So if you want to get the PDFs to all of these episodes, you can go to our website, 10minutejazzlesson.com, click on one of the Patreon links, and go over, pledge your $3 a month, and get access to all 129 PDFs that we have on file over there. It's really starting to stack up, and there's really a lot of stuff over there that can change your playing. So I wanted to give a big shout out to everybody that has joined us on Patreon this week. Thank you so much to Scott, Don, Eric, Andrew, and Tomo Taka. Thank you guys so much for becoming part of the 10-Minute Jazz Lesson family, and I know you're enjoying some of the benefits that come along with joining up over there. So one more announcement. We have finally come out with our brand new ebook and play-along set. This is called The Chromatic Way, and it's 10 etudes over some of the most classic chord progressions out there that are exploring the concepts of bebop and chromaticism. You're going to get a ton of vocabulary from this book. You're going to get a ton of new material. It's going to really challenge your technique and challenge your ears. So that is available over at the store on our website. Just click on the store tab and you will see it. It's the top thing in the store. Now, just for listening to this podcast, I want to give you a discount code. I'm going to give you 10% off the book by using the code PODCASTLISTENER at checkout. So if you haven't gotten your hands on that, make sure you go over and grab it. Our Patreon members and our mailing list members have gotten huge discounts, a lot more than 10%. So if you want to hop on Patreon, you're going to get a much, much bigger discount. If you've been thinking about joining us as a patron, now would be the time to do it. All right, let's get into today's episode. So today we're going to continue with our series on enclosures, and we're going to get into a little bit more complicated enclosures, a little bit cooler sounding stuff. We're going to do some double approaches this week, and this is sort of the next layer up from the stuff that we talked about last time, and this is going to give you a little bit more of that chromatic sound because we're going to fit a little bit more chromaticism into each enclosure. So if you missed the episode last week, make sure you go and listen to episode 128, where we talk about what enclosures are. We talk about target notes, and target notes are really the whole point of these enclosures. So if you haven't listened to that, go back and check it out because it's kind of essential information before I get into this episode. So what we did last week was we did single chromatic approaches from below and above, resulting in an enclosure. We have these chromatic approaches from above and below, but when we combine them, what we get is an enclosure. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do double chromatic enclosures. And we're going to start off by doing a double enclosure from one direction with a single in the other direction, and then we're going to close out the episode by doing a double in both directions. So if you look at your PDF from this week, you'll notice that example number 1 is a double chromatic above, single below. So again, we're using for our target tones 1, 3, and 5. We're not including 7 because it muddies the waters a little bit. And at least when we first start with enclosures, we want to be as clear as possible. So our target notes are going to be 1, 3, 5. So if you look at that first example, what I have is a double chromatic approach from above the root to a single chromatic below the root. So if you're in the key of C, which we are for all these exercises, you're going to get a D flat, and then you're going to jump down to a B, and then you're going to end up on C. So we're coming in from above, 2 half steps above, and then we're jumping 1 half step below to result in this double above, single below. Now we're going to do the same thing with the third, and then we're going to do the same thing with the fifth, and then finally we're going to finish up with the same thing on the root, an octave up from where we started. Now it's really important to notice that the point of these is that it's really clear what chord you're playing over. If you can say anything about bebop, it's that these musicians truly outline the chord more than any other style of music. So you can listen to a bebop player play without any kind of rhythm section accompaniment, and you should be able to figure out what set of chord changes they're actually playing over. So what I'm going to do this week when I actually play the examples for you is I'm going to do it with no accompaniment. And I think that that's really important because what I want you to hear is the target notes. And I think you'll be able to hear them pretty easily, but I'm purposefully playing the exercises this week with no accompaniment so that you can really hear how these enclosures sort of reinforce what the chord is, right? We're using all these notes to actually land on our target note, which is the simplest way of outlining a chord. So let's check out what the double chromatic above, single below sounds like. Exercise number 1 on your PDF this week. So you can pretty clearly hear what the target notes are, and that's the whole point. That was what I was explaining before I actually played it. So no accompaniment, no problem. That's kind of a nice thing. If you can really outline the chords, you can play a cappella, you can pretty much do whatever you want, and it's going to be really, really clear what you're doing. And that's an important thing to work on. I think we're going to do an episode on that and really cover kind of the basics of starting to do that. So anyways, let's go into exercise number 2 on your PDF for this week, where we're just reversing what we just did. Now we're going to do a double chromatic from below and a single chromatic from above. And it's really important if you're going to work on one thing to work on the opposite thing so that you have that flexibility. And no matter what you're doing, no matter where you are in your solo, you're going to have a way to sort of seamlessly get into the next chord, and you're not going to get stuck in a situation where you just have nothing that you can possibly play and your really, really nice solo kind of goes out the window because you haven't covered all your bases. That's a really important thing. It's almost like a maze, right? So instead of getting to a dead end, we can always find a way to carry on through the rest of the maze. So this is double chromatic from below, single chromatic from above. So you can hear it's a very, very similar sound. We're just doing it from a different direction. We're still using the same concept, just obviously in the different direction. So our final exercise on this week's PDF is, you guessed it, double above, double below. Now, you are going to want to reverse this at some point, but I've only given you one example of a double-double approach. And that's what I would call this, a double-double, because it is double from each direction. And this is going to be a totally different sound. Now, it's also really important to realize how much the rhythm comes into play. So what I've been doing, if I haven't made it clear from the way that I'm playing, I'm starting 3/8 notes before the target note. And remember, we always want our target notes to be on the strong harmonic beats of the measure, because that's really going to line things up with our other rules of bebop and, playing this kind of stuff where we want chord tones on beat 1 and 3. So for example, I was starting on the and of 3 to play those other examples because it's a 3-note enclosure. So now we're doing a 4-note enclosure. We have to kind of start on the beat. I'm going to start right on 3 with the enclosure so that it resolves to the target note on beat 1. And that's a really important thing, and that's a really good reason to actually have the PDF in front of you so you can see this stuff. You can actually see it in action, and you know exactly where to line things up in the measure. It's tough for me to convey that to you without having a physical worksheet in front of you. So this is double chromatic from above, double chromatic from below, and this is obviously the most complicated sounding and longest enclosure that we've done yet. Check it out. So that one's a little bit different, right? You can hear it. I know I'm stating the obvious, but I want you to really truly hear this stuff. Because remember, learning any of these concepts is really nothing unless you can hear them and assimilate them into your playing. That's the ultimate goal, is to just kind of play what you hear. And that's a really, really tall order, but it's definitely something that we should be working towards every single day. All right, so that about does it for this week. If you've got any questions, make sure you email me, 10minutejazzlesson@gmail.com. Remember, the Chromatic Way is out and in our store, and you guys can use the code podcast listener to get 10% off of that ebook and play along package today. Go and check it out. I have some recordings of myself actually playing the etudes, so you'll definitely get a taste of what this stuff actually sounds like and what you're getting in the package before you purchase it. If you're thinking about becoming a patron, you're going to get a much bigger discount on that book, and you're also going to get the incredible benefits that everybody else is getting for only $3 a month. And thank you so much to our patrons out there. We really appreciate you. Couldn't do the podcast without you. All right, we will see you next week with some brand new episodes. Have a great weekend and get to work on this stuff. Talk to you soon. Bye.